Welcome to the Second 50 Functional Mobility Video Series. I'm going to show you how you can regain and retain basic movement patterns in just 15 minutes a day. My name is George Harrop. I'm the founder of Second 50. Do you feel stiff? Do you feel like you've lost your ability to do things you used to do? Can you touch your toes easily? Can you get down into a full functional squat? Can you sit down and get up from the floor without using your hands? These are basic functional human movements, and we all lose them as we get older. But it doesn't have to be that way. Unless you're actively engaging your flexibility, you're losing it. Imperceptibly at first, but as you get older, it gets harder and harder to regain it. And research has shown that once you get to be about the age of 75 years old, there's a dramatic drop-off, there's a cliff. You don't want to be there, and you don't need to be there. With just these simple stretches, these core functional stretches that I'm going to show you in this series, you can regain what you've lost, and you can retain what you need to retain as you age. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about long hold passive stretches, as opposed to dynamic stretches. Long hold passive stretches are held for a longer period of time, and they are done in a manner that allows the muscle fibers to lengthen and allows your body to settle into this new stretch position, as opposed to dynamic stretches, which is what you're probably used to. It's what I was used to until I started practicing this method of stretching. Dynamic stretches are great for warming up, and they're what you probably did in gym class, where you're stretching like this, you're doing a short burst of stretches, you're jumping around a bit. That's great to warm up, but it's not going to make you more flexible. And we're trying to make you more flexible. We're going to be working on ankles, we're going to be working on hips, hamstrings, spine, we're going to be working on shoulders. We're going to be working on the primary major areas of your body that tend to get stiff. So this intro is going to go through some of the basics, because in each of the videos that follow, I'm going to get right into the stretch. And I'm going to try to make those videos just 10 or 15 minutes. And they're probably going to be 6 or 8 videos, each one with 2 to 3 stretches. But these will cover the basic core stretches that I'm suggesting you do in order to stay flexible. So, a couple things before we start. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert in physiology. I took these classes called The Science of Stretching a year and a half ago, and they worked so well for me that I became a devotee of this approach to stretching. In fact, I became so interested in it that I became certified as a Science of Stretching coach. So I've learned how to do the stretches, and I think they're fantastic. I've told a lot of people about them who've had tremendous success with them. So this approach to stretching has 3 major components. The first of which is called wet noodle. And wet noodle suggests that muscles stretch best like a wet noodle of pasta thrown against the wall. Muscles stretch best when they're relaxed. So everything we do in these stretches, we're trying to relax the muscles. That's the first thing. How do we do that? Muscles stretch best when they're relaxed, and we relax them by breathing. So we have a certain pattern of breathing that we use in order to relax the muscles. And it's 4 counts in through the nose and 8 counts out through the mouth. And that breathing pattern helps to relax our system, and it helps to turn off the stretch reflex, which is something you may have heard of. A stretch reflex is actually a way that our mind protects us from injuring ourselves. So when you go into a stretch that your body's not used to, it thinks you may be going too far, and it will contract the muscles to stop them from stretching too much. This breathing pattern, in for 4 counts through the nose, out for 8 counts through the mouth, relaxes that stretch reflex and allows the muscles to gently lengthen. And that's what we're trying to do. The third item, this is particularly important, is time under tension. 2-minute to 5-minute holds is what we're going to do in this series of stretches. We're going to hold short holds on muscles, doesn't give them enough time to actually stretch. So what we're going to do is most of our stretches, we're going to hold 3 to 5 minutes. Less than 2 minutes is not sufficient. More than 5 minutes is too much. And that's the big difference between this approach to mobility and other approaches to stretching, is these long hold stretches, this idea of relaxed muscles, this wet noodle, and this idea that we breathe to relax the muscles. But these long holds are what are going to allow us to really settle into the stretch. So a couple things, as we mentioned, time under tension, right? 3 to 5 minutes. We're going to have modifications for each stretch, because if you're anything like me, you couldn't do the stuff I just did a minute ago when you started. I could not do any of that when I started this stretching. But with practice and with just 15 or 20 minutes a day, I've been able to make tremendous progress. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this as a journey. And once you start these stretches, you're going to have different adjustments. I'm going to show you with each stretch, I'm going to show you, here is the most basic way to do the stretch. Here is a more challenging way to do the stretch. And here is another even more challenging way to do the stretch. And you'll find that you progress along that spectrum as you practice it. Okay, so what do you need to do this? Not a lot, not a lot. A mat would be great to have, a mat, like a yoga mat. If you're on a carpet, you don't need a yoga mat. When I travel, I typically don't have a yoga mat, and I can do these stretches right on the carpet. It'd be useful to have a couple of blocks, but if you don't have blocks, you can just use books if you needed to. It would be ideal to have a strap of some sort. Some of the stretches that we're going to do as we get further into the series would be helpful to have a strap, but you can use a belt for that. In other words, you don't need a lot of fancy equipment for this. I would suggest having a simple stool. If you have a stool, you will find that useful for some of the modifications that we're going to do to stretches. For example, when we start doing the squat, we're probably going to start here, right? This is a modified way to learn how to do the squat, to get our ankles and our hips in such a position that we can begin to really do the squat. We may then go down a little lower on that squat. We might use some blocks to go lower still, and ultimately we'll get to a point where we're actually doing the squat without any of those things. So a simple stool would be helpful to have, a couple of yoga blocks, helpful to have, a couple of cushions. Simple couch cushions are helpful to have. Why? Because a few of our stretches, let me show you what I mean. A few of our stretches might require actually having your hips on something so that you're getting a little bit of support here as you learn to do the stretch. So a couple of cushions might be helpful, and even if you have a little bit of padding, this is one of those stadium seat pads, can be helpful if you're doing something, with your knee down, might be helpful. But you don't need a lot of equipment, and you frankly don't need any of this equipment if you don't have it on hand. Okay, talked a little bit about what we're going to need. Let me talk a little bit about what we're doing here. There are dozens and dozens of these stretches, and some of them you're going to say, oh, I know that stretch from a yoga class I did, or that's just a sprinter's stretch. Well, maybe. The big difference is how we approach them. We're going to hold them for a longer period of time, and we're going to just do some subtle adjustments to each stretch, which are going to target perhaps hip flexors, ankles, areas of the body that can be limiting to our mobility. So let me talk just a little bit about this breathing pattern. I said it was breathe in for 4 counts through the nose, out 8 counts through the mouth. I'm just going to show it to you quickly, because when we get into the series, we're going to jump right into it. So in for 4, and then out for 8. And you'll notice I made kind of a sound as if I were fogging a mirror. That also helps to disengage this stretch reflex. It helps to relax the body. So it's in for 4, out for 8. We'll be doing this throughout the stretches. This is a journey. Nobody looks good in these stretches. Nobody looks good trying to get into a stretch and trying to get out of it. So don't worry about what you look like. Don't worry about where you start. There's no end game here. There's no target. There's no winners. The less flexible you are, the more you need to do this. So think of it that way. And by the way, this method of stretching is particularly good on both ends of the spectrum. If you're just getting back into exercise, if you're just getting started again, you need to make sure you have functional movement, that you're biomechanically sound. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt. If you just go out and start running a mile or 2 or 3 every day, within a matter of weeks, you're going to hurt your knees, you're going to hurt your hips, something's going to get hurt because you have not set yourself up for success. So for those of you who are just getting back into exercise, this is very valuable. On the other end of the spectrum, for those of you who are avid runners, for example, you're probably very stiff. You're in one movement pattern. You're running and you're just in one movement pattern. You've got to expand how your body moves so you can have the flexibility and you can have the range of motion necessary to help you move your hips better when you do the stride or whatever it might be. Same with bicyclists. You get into one movement pattern and you get stiff. So for both ends of the spectrum, this is valuable stuff, okay? Don't worry where you start. Just give it some time and recognize that you want to do this in a manner that it's a little bit uncomfortable, these stretches. They can be uncomfortable. You want to hold the stretches with kind of a 7 out of 10 intensity. So in the example I gave you a moment ago, if we're doing a stretch like this and we're holding it, you want to do it in such a way that, turn this way, you want to do it in such a way that it's a little uncomfortable. So right now, it's a little uncomfortable for me. And now I'm right about a 7 out of 10. If I go any further into the stretch, that becomes very uncomfortable. That's too much. Back off. It should be a little uncomfortable by the time you get to the end of 5 minutes. Say, wow, whew. And when you come out of the stretch, you're a little, okay, I felt that. You don't want joint pain. You don't want searing or burning pain anywhere. If you have that, back off, slow down, and gently get into this. There's no rush. There's no rush. Also, I'm assuming that you can get up and down off the floor. I mean, get up and down off the floor, in any manner that you're comfortable with. If you can't do that, you probably should not, or be very careful in starting these stretches, because this assumes that you don't have any significant medical problems that would preclude you from doing these stretches. If you have a new knee or a new hip, check with your doctor. A lot of people do these stretches with hip and knee replacements, but you want to start slow. Always start slow. There's no reason to push any of this. So check out the videos that follow. Each of the videos that follow is going to do 2 or 3 stretches. And if you diligently do this for 15 minutes a day, you will see a major change in 30 to 60 days. And if you just continue to do it, you'll retain that functional mobility as you get older, because you are going to lose functional mobility as you get older. We all are. The higher we start, the more mobile we start with, the more gradual that decline. That's what we're trying to do. So thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoy this, and I'm looking forward to putting these videos together for you. So thank you.